This video will show you how to use the calculator to find the vertex of your graph. So always the first thing we do when we're asked to find the vertex is we put the equation into the y equals key. And once we've put it in the y equals key, we go ahead and graph it. Because a lot of times we can look at the graph and pretty much see exactly where the vertex is. And we just go to the table and double check. So when I look here, it looks like my graph, my vertex is somewhere around 4. But when I go to my table, I can see that this is not symmetrical, so I don't have an exact value of the vertex yet. So when that's the case, then I'm going to use my calculator to find it. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to press the second, and I want to get the calculate menu up, which is the blue word above the trace key. So second activates the blue words, so second and trace will bring up my calculate menu. And when I look at this calculate menu, you're going to find we get to this menu an awful lot. You're probably already familiar with some of the different functions in it, but today we're going to work with minimum and maximum, finding the vertex. So when I look at my graph, I can see I have a minimum, meaning my vertex is at the very bottom of my graph. So I'm going to select 3, which is minimum. And when I press enter or select 3, what I end up with is a picture of my graph, and it's asking me for the left boundary. And my cursor always starts out on the y-intercept of my graph. So what it's asking for with the left boundary is it's wanting to find the very smallest point or the lowest point of my graph, but it's asking me to get it close. So it wants me to put a border on the left side and a border on the right side, and it's going to just check in between my two borders. So I'm going to go ahead and use my arrow key, and I'm going to just scroll my cursor a little bit. It doesn't have to be right beside the vertex. I just want to get it a little bit closer. So I'm moving my vertex to about here, looks fine to me, and I'm pressing enter. And what happens is the calculator now marks my left boundary. It just puts this little arrow saying that's what you've said the very farthest left boundary is. And then it's asking at the bottom for the right boundary. So since my left boundary is done and it wants the right boundary, I'm going to use my little arrow, and I'm going to scroll my cursor all the way down the parabola past the vertex and over to the right side of the vertex. And once I get it somewhere to the right, I'm going to press enter. And again, my calculator marks my boundaries. So now you can see the mark of the left boundary and the right boundary. And what it's going to do is find the very lowest point of the graph in between these two boundaries. And notice at the bottom right now it says guess. And you know we don't want to do the guess, so we're going to press enter again. And now the bottom says minimum. So in between those two boundaries, it has found the very smallest point of my graph. So my minimum, we already knew it wasn't going to be a whole number because it wasn't in the table, is 3.75, that rounds up, comma 1.375. So let's do another one. This time, let's look at a maximum. So I put another equation in and pressed y into my y equals and pressed graph. And when I look at this, it is not an exact whole number, not something I can see easily. So I'm going to go ahead and press my second key, the blue key, to activate the calculate menu above the key trace. So second and trace. And this time, I'm going to select 4 for maximum. And again, doing the same thing it did before, it starts out with a cursor on my y-intercept. But notice because our parabola is further over, it's starting out with my cursor on the right side of the vertex. So the first thing I've got to do is use my arrow keys, and I need to scroll to get over to the left side. So I scrolled it over to the left side. Once I'm over there, I'm going to press enter, and the calculator is going to mark my left boundary. And now it's asking for the right boundary. So using my arrow keys, I'm going to scroll up and over till I'm on the right side. And when I get there, I press enter. And again, the calculator marks my right boundary and says guess at the bottom. So we press enter one more time, and it tells me what my maximum is. And looking at this, my maximum is -3.33, 2.33.